Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today, we're on a new deck profile. It's WITCHCRAFTER. This is a deck I waited so long to update. I think I did a profile like so long ago on the channel, but the deck never got support. Then it got support like almost a whole year ago, I think in December for the OCG, and then it took a whole year for them to import it, but we finally have the new Fusion Monster and Fusion Spell. Those cards are absolutely monumental for this strategy. They have been looking for new win conditions that are actually powerful enough for the current state of the game, and I think they actually have a little bit of something here. Now, I don't think this deck performs particularly well in this format right now. One, this deck hates Shifter, and two, all the graveyard removal and stuff in the format right now, the Ishizu Fairies, is really brutal. Plus, this deck's removal is almost exclusively destruction. So yeah, it just has a terrible tier matchup and has a terrible Shifter matchup, which means it like loses to the best deck and then loses to like most of the other decks because they're all playing Shifter to combat Ishizu. So really bad place to play it, but I do think there could potentially be formats going forward at some point, depending on this particular attributes of the metagame, where this deck actually could be a respectable rogue deck. Again, it kind of plays similarly to it did before, just does a little better at that. You want to simplify the board state, you want to start rotating spells, and you will just automatically win the grind if you get into a simplified board state, because you start adding back like 2 to 4 spells every single end phase, and you just never run out of advantage. It's really, really good. All right, so let's get into it, starting off with our monster lineup here. Triple copies of WITCHCRAFTER Schmeta, triple copies of WITCHCRAFTER Jenny, then 1 Pator and 1 Pottery. This is my WITCHCRAFTER lineup here. I think they're kind of in order here from best to worst. Schmeta's by far the best one. She also has the best stats, which is kind of weird. Normally, it would be like better effect, worse stats, but she's got the best of both worlds. Jenny's also really good. She's gotten better as the deck has become more functional and you're able to fill more stuff into your grave. Pator, really solid as well, kind of has like a cycle effect, but it's just another WITCHCRAFTER trigger, which can trigger your Fusion Monster for more pluses. And potentially get to another plus by hitting like another spell. And then Pottery, just getting you an add back when you have no cards in hand. It's pretty good because your hand likes to discard all your cards, and then before you hit end phase, you add all your cards back, but this can get you a faster add back in those scenarios. So this is all the normal summons you play. You play like 3 cards to search this, plus Prosperity, so you've got a fairly consistent way to see one of these. You kind of need to see one of these in any given hand, even if they get ashed or orange lighted or gamma, whatever you want to, whatever it is, just getting them engraved can literally save you by itself. So that's the most important thing, is at least seeing one and getting it to grave, because they all give you solid grave effects, and you can just go from there. For the boss monsters, at least in the main deck, we have 1 Madame Vare, 1 Hane, and 1 Golem Aruru. Sometimes I go back and forth on Aruru whether or not I want to play it, but the whole point of the deck is getting to a simplified board state, and this card does help with that and just help you grind, because it's just such an annoying card to work around. If you don't know how these all work, oh, by the way, if you're not privy to the WITCHCRAFTER strategy, all the small WITCHCRAFTERs have a quick effect where they tribute themselves and pitch a spell from hand, any spell, to special summon another WITCHCRAFTER from the deck. And then they also have individual graveyard effects. Schmeta just foolishes any WITCHCRAFTER card. Jenny banishes herself and a spell to copy the spell's effect. Pator draws a card, and if it's a WITCHCRAFTER, and then send a WITCHCRAFTER card from your hand to the graveyard. And then Pottery, if you have no cards in hand, adds a WITCHCRAFTER card back to hand. And then the big ones. So the big ones, these two work the same, and then this one's kind of its own thing. So these two both have quick effects where you can pitch a spell from hand to then non-target, just blanket negate all face-up monsters your opponent controls. And this one just pops a target and pop a face-up card your opponent controls. This one also has like targeting protection from like other cards, other spellcasters you control, but this one has like a battle trick to it. That's why it's so small at 1000 attack. And then Aruru. So Aruru is a weird protection card. Can be an interruption. So if your opponent targets a spellcaster monster you control with a card effect or attack, this card, you can reveal this in hand. It'll special summon itself, and then it'll either add a WITCHCRAFTER spell from your grave back to your hand, or return a monster your opponent controls to the hand. So like imagine your opponent tries to like Kaleido Heart, like target like one of your WITCHCRAFTERs to like bounce it back to your hand, and then you trigger this where this specials and then bounces the Kaleido back to their extra deck. And then this card bounces itself back to hand on, is it your opponent's next standby phase? Which is pretty cool. So this card just get in rotation, and it's just really annoying for deck staff to like worry about as they're trying to play the game consistently. So that's it for the Witchcrafter monsters. The only other monster I play in the main is Triple Gamma and the Driver. So as I said, all of your small Witchcrafters, the way you even attempt to play the duel in the first place, using their effect to tribute themselves as cost and pitching a spell, which means if your opponent ashes, gammas of their own, or orange lights you, they are going to go ahead and just negate everything. You lose your normal summon, you've lost that effect, and you lose the spell from hand. It can be absolutely crushing. So this card protecting you from those is really nice. Plus versus tier right now, and I know this isn't the best format for this deck, but this card actually for this deck is pretty cool because if they're going to Havness you, they're probably going to Havness you on the activation, in response to the activation of the Witchcrafter on field, which means you've tributed for costs, so your field is clear, so you could just negate a Havness if you want. Kelbeck, same thing, because you will have pitched a spell from hand to grave, so Kelbeck will be triggering there usually as well. Gamma punishes the Kelbeck there. And I guess Bestials, they wouldn't really fire there, but those are the three main ones. So I guess versus them, like, still Gamma's pretty good at protecting you from some of their hand traps to get their stuff going on your turn. So there's Gamma. Into the spells, the Witchcrafter lineup is actually quite extensive. Triple copies of Creation, triple Holiday, double Unveiling, double Confession. Let's scoot these over because I got more than I made room for. And then we have one copy of Draping and one By Street. So yeah, pretty much you play the amount of copies of how good they are, in my opinion. These two are the best ones. This one just searches a Witchcrafter monster. That's why it's really good. It just essentially 3 more names of your starter Witchcrafters. And then Holiday is just Monster Reborn for a Witchcrafter monster. Still solid. Again, like if one gets interrupted and does get, you know, ashed, gamma, orange lighted, whatever, you can just reborn it and pass and then do it on your opponent's turn. So you still get something going. Unveiling is the next one. This one specials a Witchcrafter from hand, but then your opponent cannot respond. Your opponent can activate cards or effects in response to your spellcaster effects for the rest of the turn. It's actually really powerful sometimes, like even going second, like summoning a Witchcrafter. Plus, because we play the 3 bricky Witchcrafter boss monsters in the main, these can be really crucial to like help extend those out of the hand if you're bricking on them. Confusion, Confession, this is the new fusion card. It's just a basic fusion, unfortunately. If this card could have banished from grave, then like automatic 3 of, like we would have been able to not have to play as many other cards we already have in the deck, but unfortunately it doesn't work that way. It's just a regular fusion, so it does take a good amount of resources. Luckily the new fusion monster like pluses you so much it makes up for it. But you don't need to max out on this, I don't think, if you don't want to. I just play 2 right now, and that's fine. And then we have 1 Draping, 1 By Street. These are more utility. Draping targets spells and traps up to the number of Witchcrafters you control and bounces them back to hand. I know that doesn't sound very good, but like with most meta decks, like setting stuff like Sulliek into boards and setting Smashers or starters and stuff, just like bouncing those and like pretty much like making their deck way slower can definitely come up. For sure, and it's just another name. And then By Street. So this card on the field says every time and every single Witchcrafter you control would be destroyed. It's not. That is insane. That's not once per turn, like one time. It's for every individual Witchcrafter. It can't be destroyed once per turn. It's really cool. And then I explained to you the monsters, but the spells have their own attribute. They all do the things I told you they do, but their bonus effect is that if they're in grave and they haven't activated their other effect this turn, then and you control a spellcaster, Witchcrafter or spellcaster? It is a Witchcrafter specifically. Then they add themselves back to hand. So that's the whole idea. Like you pitch them for the monster effects, and then on the end phase you add back every one you didn't actually activate the main effect and just pitched. So you kind of like, it looks like you go super neg to do your play, and then on the end phase you add like 2 or 3 cards back to hand. It's pretty cool, and it gives you fodder to have your interruption on the opponent's turn. Then for the additional spells, triple copies of Magicalized Fusion. This card's pretty insane in the deck. I might as well throw Instant Fusion out here as well. So yeah, if you don't know what Magicalized Fusion does, it fusions them as a Spellcaster Fusion from extra by banishing fusion monsters from field or grave. Because of like Artemis, the Magistus Moon Maiden, it's very easy to just get, like any normal summon like gets you like materials to go ahead and just like make your fusion boss monster. It's a really good, it allows you to like use your basic Witchcrafter plays not to have to turbo into the fusion, because this card is just a 1-card fusion once you have access to those, which is really good. You really want to see this card because it just makes getting the fusion out like way easier. and through interruption, right? Like they interrupt you, but as long as you have just like 2 spellcasters engraved, like boom, you get there. And then Instant Fusion, this card is really good. It's a spellcaster extender, helps you go second with Thousand Eyes, helps you go first with Millennium Eyes, and just gets you extra spellcaster names in rotation for fusion stuff, which is pretty good. So it's just a cool one-off, and it's a spell. And that's the bonus thing here to keep in mind is you can play some pretty high ceiling spells that have some drawbacks normally, but because every single card in your deck like pitches any spell to work, yes, you may not get the greatest synergy as far as like getting a resource back from grave, but it's like, oh, my Instant Fusion does nothing here. I'll just pitch it to pop a card for Hane, or I'll just pitch it to negate their whole field with Madame Bear. Like that's how it like ends up balancing out in the end. Like the cards that like may not be perfect in every scenario. Triple Prosperity, I opt to play this. I think you can play Extravagance or like some other draw engine if you want to play like Upstart with like Metal Foes Fusion, just to like draw a card once you pitch it off of like any of the Witchcrafter effects. That's totally fine. I just think this is just the upgraded version of that. Again, I want to harp on this. I don't love decks that are like this, but if you do not find a small Witchcrafter, you just lose the duel. Your deck does nothing. So again, this is another card that just gives you a better chance at finding one of the small Witchcrafters, better than something like Metal Foes Fusion would. And then we have some like going second stuff. So I have 2 Dark Ruler or more, 2 Tactics, 1 Cosmic, and 1 Called. Called's not really going second, it's just kind of the odd man out. And also one more thing, this was supposed to be my Harpy's Feather Duster. I didn't have it on me when I went to make this profile, so I have to figure out where that is. But it was just like, it's a high ceiling, potentially wipe a whole back row, potentially hit multiple cards for the price of 1, and that could be really good. So Cosmic is just kind of filling in for that. But again, these are spells where like, these are not always going to be amazing. There are going to be times where Dark Ruler is just not even good. You're going first. Like, woo. It's just better to pitch. And if it needs to be that, then that's all it is. It's just discard fodder. Tactics, really good in the format. Really good in this deck because it can be good going first or going second. So I really appreciate this card for that it's a little more flexible than the rest of these. But if it is dead, again, it can just be pitched. And then whatever, the Harpy's Feather Duster and the Called, cards at 1 for a reason because they can just do a huge thing. And Called specifically because, like I said, Orange Light, Ash, doesn't protect us from Gamma, but Orange Light and Ash can just absolutely kill this deck. So it is one more card that just saves us from that. So we'll take it. 40 cards in the main. It's been pretty consistent in testing for me so far. So I feel pretty good about the main. I'm sure there are other techs. I've seen some other people mess around with other small engines that help you do fusion stuff, but it really depends. I think the Albaz fusion is potentially playable, but we'll get to that a little later on. Unfortunately, Verte was like such a nice piece for this deck, and then this is one of the decks that made like really cool use of Verte instead of just generically making, DPE, which was annoying, but like it is what it is. All right, into the extra. Link 1s, double Artemis. I don't know where the second one is, but I have 2. This is just to get extra spellcaster names in rotation. And then when you use like Magicalized Fusion, you'd have this plus another. Relinquish, this is because Jenny's level 1, but also if you use Instant Fusion, both Millennium and Thousand Eyes are level 1. So this card's actually pretty good if your opponent's getting a little laissez-faire with the column placement. Link 2 is Lambda because we play Gamma. Asa and Lina. Also, it's just pretty good in the format with stuff like Fenrir or taking some of the shufflers from your opponent's grave to force them out early. That can definitely come up. And then Lina, just because you have Artemis, which means any small like spellcaster turns into a light. So this one's just like too easy to make, essentially. Even though I don't know if light is the best one. There's definitely some argument to like try and shift around because technically you can play like any charmer. This deck has like access to like every attribute if you need it. So there's an argument to play like all of them, honestly, if you wanted, or shift around which ones are better. Selene, this card's amazing in this deck. This card's so good because then you're like reborning a small one, and then the small one's tagging into a big one on the opponent's turn. It's a really, really good card in this deck. And then Unicorn, just in case we need removal, and Access Code. You go into Access Code with like Selene lines, or like you go Asa, Line, Revive, make Selene. Obviously, there's going to be a ton of spells in rotation, so you just make Access Code and win the duel. Try to win the duel from there. That's it for the links for the fusions. Triple Vice Master. This is the new card. I guess I need to go over this. She has 3 big effects. By the way, she takes any Witchcrafter plus any Spellcaster. She's pretty generic. 27, 28 stats, pretty big. When a spell or a non-fusion spellcaster monster effect is activated, so and either of those, you can activate one of these effects. But you can only use each effect once per turn. So you have 3 effects, but you can use all 3 in the same turn. So you can do 3 times. The first one, non-target, destroy a card on the field. Love it. Second one, special summon a level 6 or lower Witchcrafter from your hand or deck. Love it. Just summons a small one out of deck. If you just have a spell, then you can pitch to summon one of the big ones, get them in rotation. So you have a pop plus a negate with Vare or a pop plus a pop with Hane. And then the third one, add a Witchcrafter spell or trap from your graveyard back to your hand. Again, that's really good because like if you're summoning one of the small ones from deck, you still need spells to be able to discard for those to get into the big ones to apply more pressure. And so the fact that this has the third effect where it just adds another one back to hand, super, super good to maintain that hand advantage. This card is insane. It's an interruption, summons from deck, and adds back from grave, all in the same turn a lot of the time. This card's insane. You have to, this card's so cool. One copy of Iwas, the Magistus Spell Spirit. This one's a little weird. So this card can actually just be made with any Magistus monster plus a spellcaster. So the idea is like if you just make Artemis and then you just have Magicalized Fusion in hand, you can just make this card. The idea is you're never making this over Vice Madam, but if you have her already and you just want another boss monster, you could just go for an Iwas, right? Which is pretty cool. Because he can like quick effect steal an opponent's monster. It's pretty cool. And then these are your going second option for instant fusion, and your going first option. Another way to protect you from hand traps as well. So you have like 5 cards that just protect you from hand traps. And then the Omega. If you gamma on your own turn, you want to be able to punish your opponent by ripping an extra card out of their hand. So yeah, Omega's pretty good for that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The deck's really cool. I highly recommend it if you're looking for a fun deck. But again, I just think this format is super unfortunate for this deck right now. But I do believe there'll be a world where this deck can do some stuff and it has synergy with like some generic spellcaster stuff. So maybe down the line, and maybe even fusion stuff. Like maybe there's an argument for playing like an Albaz engine in the deck to like just dump, some cards, get him in rotation and go from there. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out the kinks in the deck, but it's still really cool. And I think the deck's it's really good. And also like, the fact that Ash hasn't played a ton in the format anymore, like it just seems like Ash maybe power crept out of Yu-Gi-Oh for the time being. Like Witchcrafter, that was Witchcrafter's biggest weakness. So I'm definitely a big fan of that, but we'll have to see how the deck fares going forward. But all in all, that's where I'm at. Definitely let me know your thoughts down below, guys. If you have any suggestions for different packages, techs in the deck, I would love to hear your thoughts. It's definitely a really weird deck, and there are some other techs I didn't try here, but I know are like really cool. I think Cartesia is a pretty interesting card here. Like I said, the Albaz engine. I definitely just want to hear your guys' thoughts on that because I'd be curious where you guys land on some of the other engines there. But I'm out of here for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Subscribe if you have not yet and you want to see more sweet deck profiles down the line. Peace.